2018 ended kind of badly. I'm not surprised that the first trading week of 2019 for Bursa wasn't great either, was it really, Billy?
It's one of the worst, I think probably since 2016.
That's never a good thing. Why was it so bad? Because when I looked back at last year, I found it very hard to kind of really pinpoint why everything just went so bad. Was it trade tensions? Was it oil? Was it a mixture of everything? I mean, like, what did the guys you spoke to say? Why was it so bad?
There's a mixture of everything if you're talking about last year. I mean, you've trade tensions and all that. But by December, actually, there is a bit of relief from the trade tension point of view, because Trump and President Xi Jinping have come to a point that to cease fire and talk for 3 months, that sort of thing. But the thing is, there are a lot of other things that are coming in. The tariff that Trump has slapped on China, so it starts to flow into the economic. So you start to see the impact from there, which is why the Bursa and Asian market started off very weak, because the China data that came out was very bad.
It was, wasn't it? Yeah, surprisingly.
And then you have Apple's Tim Cook coming out and say that that lowering that forecast because mainly because of China. So you have all that concerns. So which is why you see that sort of reaction in the market. Yeah.
Okay. And then when the guys you spoke to, so of course, in terms of this, you turn defensive, right? This is when it's not that you exit the market completely when it's bad, right? That's never a good thing. When markets are volatile, we know we go in and we go in defensive. So when you talk to the guys, one of the defensive picks was Maybank. Why Maybank?
Partly because Maybank is the largest bank in Malaysia. That's Correct. One thing, right? So and the dividend that Maybank is offering is pretty interesting at this point. It's about 5 to 6%. Of course, there will be those who argue that your bottom line will be affected and your dividend will be impacted. Maybe in the short term, right? But if you have a bit longer term, 3 to 5 years sort of point of view, then Maybank is at a pretty attractive level to buy into, because there's one, like you said, the market is volatile. You cannot, a lot of people expected the year in 2018 to be good. It started off with very high optimism and ended very badly. So this year people are expecting it to be very bad, but doesn't mean that it will definitely be bad. So investors, they want to stay invested, and one of the best picks is probably Maybank at this point for some of them, because it makes sense if there were to be a recovery in the market in terms of sentiment and everything. Imagine if Trump and Xi Jinping suddenly become best buddies, right? So that's the sort of thing that people are trying to position themselves in, and Maybank gives that sort of very good way. At the same time, you don't have you won't have a huge downside, but you can recover when the markets were to recover. So that's one of the reasons why Maybank is being mentioned. Yeah.
All right. So, and then the other thing that they looked into, of course, is to healthcare, because the government is going to spend more into like healthcare, which is a good thing, but not the expensive healthcare stocks. In particular, somebody mentioned UEM Magenta, which I found really strange, because they don't actually in healthcare themselves, but they service hospitals, right? They service government hospitals. I always thought those contracts were a bit in the air, but the analysts say they're okay.
Yeah, I guess based on the guidance and all that, it seems like whatever that they have today is intact and is not going to be affected by the change of government. We've seen a lot of concerns in. So far at this point, at least UEM Magenta appears to be okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then here's the other thing which I found interesting, right? So we're talking about defensive, but it's actually time for us to change what we think is quote-unquote defensive, right? Because when you thought of defensive, you think of the blue chips, the big GLCs. That's not true anymore, is it?
Yeah, I guess one of it was mentioned in the story was the traditional defensive playbook, like the utility players like Tenaga, telcos, and also the gaming players, right? So you've seen how bad they were in 2018, partly because of external factors, partly because of some of the changes that we've seen locally. So this is the fear that, while some of these companies offer sustainable sort of income and they will be able to give you sustainable dividend at the same time, but the change of government sort of changed the game a bit, because you don't know what's going to happen next. Like you look at TM, for example, in 2018, how badly it was affected when Gobind Singh came out and said that
we want to drive down prices.
Yeah, you want to double the speed, half the price, which is good for consumer, which is good if it can help to drive efficiency. But at least in the near term to medium term, it will be bad because there's all this risk that wasn't there before.
Tenaga is also the same, because although you always thought of it as very defensive and everything, because there's only one utility player, right? So the old guys who used to think about monopolies, they're not secure anymore, are they?
Yeah. Because you have ministers coming out that you want to do the reform, you didn't want monopoly, you want to open market, and it's good in a way. I'm sure it would be good for Tenaga and the rest in the long term, but at least in the short term, it's going to affect them, at least in terms of the sentiment. So
that's it. Silver lining, but it's going to take some time.
Yeah. So while after all that, a huge sell down and all that, they appear to be relatively attractive, but investors will be a bit more cautious when talking about entering into them. You look at how the analysts are positioning themselves in all these counters. Most of them are giving a hold call. Just if you're already in it, just hold it. But most of them are still cautious about whether the recovery will happen so soon.
So will the recovery happen soon? Because we talked about a 10-year cycle, right? It always seems to be that every 10 years there is this period of pain that everybody goes through. Are we entering the 10-year cycle?
People did mention is that what's going to happen next is going to be very important. The meeting between Trump and presidency, how the US and China are going to come to a conclusion in their trade, whether there will be a trade resolution. There are some that most actually expect it to remain as it is right now. So even if it remains as it is, they think that at least it will be okay for the market. But if things were to improve better than as it is, so then the market could recover. So that would be the catalyst that the market is looking at.
For more on the stories, pick up a copy of The Edge Weekly at all good newsstands.